sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into 2 whole hours of classic Pokemon cards to fall asleep, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from tonight? And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always kind of magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. Like one big, slightly nerdy, very cozy family scattered across the world, all nodding off to the same stories. All right, lights low, blankets up, maybe grab a hot cup of tea if you're feeling fancy. Let's begin. And where better to start than with the one, the only, the card that made schoolyards turn into black markets and friendships, temporarily dissolve over lopsided trades. Base set Charizard. Every collection has its holy grail. A card, a treasure, a piece of history so elusive and legendary that it takes on a life beyond its paper borders. In the world of classic Pokemon cards, that grail was always Charizard. Base set Charizard. The name alone could send a ripple of excitement through a room full of kids and collectors alike. Long before internet auctions, before rare card grading services, and before sleek binders organized by rarity and region, there was a time when trading Pokemon cards was ruled by one card, and one card alone. That fiery winged dragon with a gaze as fierce as the stories told about it. Released in 1999 as part of the original English Pokemon base set, the Charizard card became more than just a piece of collectible cardboard. It became a badge of honor, a status symbol, a coveted artifact that held the power to instantly crown a kid the king or queen of their local playground. It was more than a game piece. It was a legend, one that spread through schoolyards, parks, and neighborhood gatherings like wildfire. A single glimpse of that holographic surface glimmering in the sun could draw a crowd of curious onlookers. Hands would reach for their own collections. Stories would spill out, each more incredible than the last. Kids would swear they saw someone pull 2 Charizards from the same box. Another would claim they heard a kid on the other side of town had 4. There were whispers about certain booster packs, marked with invisible codes that guaranteed a Charizard if you could just learn how to find them. The truth didn't matter. The legend did. The card itself, illustrated by the iconic Mitsuhiro Arita, captured a moment of action. A fiery breath mid-roar, with wings spread wide and a flame-tipped tail casting light across the card's shimmering background. It wasn't just a static picture. It felt alive, as though any moment the Charizard might burst from the card and take to the skies. For many, it wasn't about playing the actual trading card game. It was about holding the rarest, most talked-about card in their circle of friends. Decks were built, but few dared to play a Charizard, lest it suffer a crease or a corner ding. For some, the card never left, its protective sleeve living its life carefully tucked away in a binder page, or perhaps hidden in a shoebox beneath a bed, taken out only under the most special circumstances. And there was one version of the card that, even among legends, sat on a higher throne. The shadowless Charizard. When the base set first arrived in North America, early print runs of the cards were made without the drop shadow along the right side of the Pokemon's portrait window. It was a subtle detail easily overlooked by most, but for keen-eyed collectors, it marked a card as part of the very first wave of prints. Shadowless cards became the ultimate prize, and a shadowless Charizard was rarer still. Stories of its value spread just as quickly as rumors of kids who might have one. It became a piece of playground mythology, whispers of enormous trades, entire collections given away for the chance to hold a shadowless Charizard for even a moment. The card's value wasn't just in rarity or beauty. It represented the golden age of Pokemon collecting, when friendships were forged and rivalries built over who had the better deck or the shinier card. It was the object of countless childhood dreams. The possibility that the next booster pack you opened could contain that precious card was enough to keep kids eagerly returning to local card shops, convenience stores, and corner markets, pooling together allowance money, trading doubles with friends, and counting down the days to birthdays when a new pack or 2 might be theirs. It's strange to think that a simple piece of glossy cardstock could hold so much weight in young hearts. Yet for many, it did. And perhaps it still does. Because the Charizard card wasn't just a card. It was a moment in time, a symbol of luck, of childhood. Excitement of the thrill of chance. Even kids who never pulled one, who never so much as touched a Charizard card, could recite the tales. They knew the exact holographic pattern. They could describe the attack stats and hit points from memory. It was burned into the collective consciousness of a generation. And though some cards came close in popularity, none could unseat Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, and even holographic Mewtwo, all held court in their own right. But Charizard was the monarch. It commanded attention, admiration, and jealousy in equal measure. Its legend only grew with time. Decades later, collectors still chase those early base-set Charizards. Some stored away in pristine condition, waiting for a chance to surface at auction or in private trades. Others lost to time, tucked away in attic boxes or left behind in childhood bedrooms, now long empty. Every so often, a new story emerges. Someone finds a binder in a parent's basement, untouched for years, and nestled among faded energy cards and well-worn commons, there it is, the Charizard. Its surface still gleaming, its edges sharp. In that moment, all those playground stories, those whispered trades, and sleepless nights hoping for one more pack, they come rushing back, a reminder of a time when a simple card could make you feel invincible. The card's appeal wasn't just about its power within the game. Though it was strong, with its flamethrower attack capable of dealing heavy damage and a hefty retreat cost hinting at its intimidating size and strength, it was more about the story it told. The artwork suggested a wild, untamable spirit. A creature born from fire and fury, yet somehow under your command. Owning the Charizard card meant owning that power, if only in your imagination. It sparked daydreams of epic battles and grand adventures, and of being the kid who could tame the fiercest Pokémon of them all. There's something beautifully innocent in those memories. A time before value was measured in dollars and grades. Before protective cases and insurance appraisals. When a card was priceless, not because of its market worth, but because of what it meant to you and your friends. Charizard was a legend, and every kid wanted to be the one to tell their story of how they got it. Some would embellish their tales, claiming to have traded a dozen rare cards for one. Others insisted they pulled it from a booster, pack bought with saved-up lunch money. The stories were always grand, always filled with excitement. And no one cared if they were true, because the joy came from imagining it could happen. But somewhere, in some unopened pack, another Charizard waited, ready to ignite another memory. Even now, the sight of that card can stir something in those who once chased it. The flicker of childhood wonder, the memory of a friend's voice calling out during recess, waving a card high in the air, the gleam of sunlight across a holographic surface, a moment when it felt like the whole world stopped to marvel at a piece of shimmering paper. The Charizard card isn't just a card. It's a symbol of youth, of simpler times when stories could be built from the simplest of things. A reminder that sometimes it's not the rarest treasures or the most expensive prizes that mean the most, but the memories attached to them. In a way, every base set Charizard carries not just a history of battles won and trades made, but a collection of stories, each as unique as the person who held it. It stands as a relic of a time when magic came in foil wrappers, and adventure was found in the turn of a card, when friends gathered on porches and playgrounds, in school hallways and bedroom floors, to trade, to brag, to dream. A time when luck was measured by what booster pack you picked from the box, and glory by what you found inside. And at the heart of it all, one card reigns supreme. Base set Charizard, the shadowed legend, the king of cardboard, the story that never fades. Even today, collectors chase it, players admire it, and those who grew up in its glow remember what it felt like to hope, to dream, and to believe in the luck of a single pack. To believe that maybe, just maybe, the next one they opened would hold that fiery promise. And even if it didn't, the hope alone was enough, because that was the real magic of the card. Not the card itself, but the moments it created. In the world of classic Pokémon cards, there were many valuable pieces, many rare finds, and countless memories, but none quite like the Charizard. It wasn't just a card you owned. It was a card that owned a little piece of you. And maybe, if base set Charizard was the king of playground legends, then Ancient Mew was the mysterious sage. A card shrouded in myth, there are runes and cinema magic. It arrived at a time when Pokémon wasn't just a card game or a TV show, but an unstoppable cultural force. It wasn't the strongest card, nor was it the rarest, but it might have been the most captivating. Ancient Mew wasn't like the other cards. It looked alien, ancient, like something dug up from the ruins of a lost civilization, left behind by ancient trainers who whispered in a language no one could read. And that was the beauty of it. The first time kids saw Ancient Mew was during the release of Pokémon, the movie 2000. That summer, theaters across the country were packed with kids clutching popcorn and trading cards, all eagerly waiting for a glimpse of Lugia, the mysterious new legendary, and the heartwarming bond between Ash and his Pokémon friends. But before the lights dimmed, before the movie even began, each child received a sealed envelope. Inside that envelope was a card, unlike any other, Ancient Mew. The moment you pulled it out, you knew this wasn't like the cards you picked up at the local shop or traded on the school bus. Its back was the same familiar blue swirl every other card had. But flip it over, and it was as if you were holding a relic. The card's front was a shimmering holographic purple, with Mew floating in the center, surrounded by strange glyphs and ancient symbols that looked like something out of a forgotten language. No attack names you could recognize. No energy symbols you were familiar with. Just runes and shapes and a mysterious number where the usual HP should be. It felt like a secret, like something you weren't meant to understand. And naturally, kids made up stories. Some swore the card could only be read by those who were chosen. Others insisted it held clues to unlock rare Pokémon in the games. A friend of mine believed if you held it under a full moon, the writing would reveal itself. Spoiler alert, it didn't, but we all stayed up late one summer night testing the theory anyway. The card's mystery wasn't limited to its appearance. Even the way you got it felt different. This wasn't a booster pack pull. This wasn't something you traded for a handful of duplicates. It was a gift for showing up, a token for being part of the adventure. And for a generation of young fans, there was something magical about that. You didn't need luck, money, or a rare pull. Just a movie ticket, and a seat in a darkened theater where, for a couple of hours, anything felt possible. As soon as those Ancient Mew cards were in circulation, the stories started. Kids claimed to have decoded the runes. Others were convinced it held powers the regular cards didn't. Some kids refused to trade theirs, no matter what was offered, while others tried to gather as many as possible, believing a collection of Ancient Mews might grant untold card-collecting power. One friend claimed his cousin's Ancient Mew glowed in the dark. It didn't. But in the right light, that shimmering hollow foil gave off a glow that was eerie, enough to make you wonder. And then there were the older kids who claimed to know the secrets. They'd lean against chain-link fences at recess, flipping through their binders, and insist the card's language was based on the unknown alphabet, a set of ancient characters from the games. This was technically true, though most of us were too young to verify it. Still, the rumor gave the card even more weight. If it was connected to the unknown, it must be special. It must mean something. The artwork itself, designed by Pokémon illustrator Hideki Kazuma, was unlike anything else in the trading card game at the time. Most cards featured bright, clean images of Pokémon in action poses, sometimes in mid-battle, other times standing proudly, against colorful backdrops. But Ancient Mew looked like a relic. Its lines were rough, jagged, intentionally primitive. Mew was depicted not as a cute, floating, cat-like creature, but as a sacred symbol suspended in a timeless void, framed by those strange, unreadable runes. Even the holographic pattern felt different, less polished than the other cards, with a rainbow shimmer that shifted in the light like rippling water. Some cards are prized for their power, others for their rarity, but Ancient Mew was beloved for the story it told. It wasn't about stats or abilities. It was about mystery, about holding a piece of the unknown, a fragment of Pokémon history that felt ancient even when it was brand new. It felt like something no one could fully explain. And because of that, everyone had their own interpretation. Was it a card from a lost era, a secret code, a simple promotional gimmick? It didn't matter. What mattered was how it made you feel. Years later, as card values soared and collectors scrambled to reclaim pieces of their childhood, Ancient Mew remained a favorite. Not because it was the most valuable, though pristine copies in sealed envelopes certainly carried a price, but because it captured a feeling few cards ever could. A moment frozen in time. The summer of Pokemon's cinematic explosion. A darkened theater. A room full of kids clutching popcorn. And that electric hush that settled just before the opening scene. The rustle of those paper envelopes. The gasp as the card inside was revealed. That was the true value of Ancient Mew. Even today, if you mention the card in conversation, chances are someone will light up and say, "Oh yeah, I still have mine." Or I remember getting that at the movie theater. It's one of those rare collectibles where nearly everyone has a story. Maybe theirs was lost in a move, or sits in a dusty shoebox at their parents' house. Maybe it's framed on a shelf, a tiny piece of childhood preserved, like a pressed flower. Or maybe, like so many things from that era, it vanished with time, remembered only in quiet moments like this. What makes Ancient Mew endure isn't its monetary value or its playability in the game. It's the intangible things, the way it bridges, the gap between the game, the show, and the movies. The way it represented a time when Pokémon was everywhere, inescapable, and endlessly exciting. And cards weren't just collectibles, but passports to a larger world. A world filled with ancient secrets, legendary Pokémon, and magic that existed just out of reach. And maybe if you're lucky enough to still have your Ancient Mew, take a moment to hold it under the light. Watch how the colors shift. Trace your finger over those cryptic symbols. Remember what it felt like to open that envelope, to feel like you were part of something bigger than yourself, part of a world where a simple piece of cardstock could feel like treasure. Ancient Mew didn't need to be the rarest, or the strongest, or even the most valuable. It had something better. A sense of mystery, a sense of magic. And for every kid who walked out of that theater with a holographic card in hand, it was a reminder that sometimes the best stories are the ones you can't quite explain. The ones that don't need to make sense, because the feeling they leave behind is worth more than any stat line or collector's price. And that, perhaps, is why Ancient Mew remains so beloved. It didn't try to be like the others. It didn't flash its attack power or brag about its hit points. It simply existed, strange and beautiful, and impossible to fully understand. A little piece of mystery tucked inside a movie theater envelope, carried home in sweaty palms and pocketed for safekeeping. It was a card that said you were there. You were part of the moment. You believed in the magic. And maybe you still do. In the vast world of Pokémon cards, where thousands of creatures have been immortalized in glossy cardboard and countless rarities have come and gone, one card stands above them all. A card so rare, so elusive, and so steeped in legend that for years it was more rumor than reality. It wasn't the strongest card, nor did it come with a blistering attack or an impossibly high hit point score. Its value wasn't in its power, but in its story. And its name was Pikachu Illustrator. If Ancient Mew was a card wrapped in mystery, Pikachu Illustrator was a card wrapped in whispers. Whispers passed from kid to kid, in schoolyards, from collector to collector at flea markets, and from online forum to online forum in the early days of the internet, when blurry images and second-hand stories were all most people had to go on. It was the card you heard about long before you ever saw it, if you ever saw it at all. What made Pikachu Illustrator so special wasn't just its scarcity, though with only a handful of authentic copies known to exist, it was certainly scarce. No, what made it legendary was how it came to be. Unlike the cards you found in booster packs or traded with friends, Pikachu Illustrator was never meant for ordinary collectors. It was a prize, a trophy, a reward given out during a series of illustration contests held by the Japanese magazine Korokoro Comic in the late 1990s. These contests invited young artists and fans to submit their best Pokémon artwork, with winners receiving not only recognition in the pages of the magazine, but also this special card, printed exclusively for them. The card itself was unlike anything else in the game. Designed by Atsuko Nishida, one of the original artists behind Pikachu's design, it featured Pikachu joyfully sketching with a paintbrush and art supplies scattered around. The border shimmered with a pattern, unique to this card alone. And where other cards would describe attacks and abilities, this one carried a line of text declaring the card's purpose: to recognize an artist's achievement. Its name, Pikachu Illustrator, wasn't just a title, it was a badge of honor. At the time of its release, very few people outside of Japan even knew it existed. It wasn't something you could find in a booster pack at your local corner store. It wasn't traded on playgrounds or showcased in glossy promotional materials. It was given only to contest winners, with estimates suggesting that perhaps 39 to 41 copies were ever officially distributed. Over the years, a handful of those have surfaced, some through private collections, others appearing at high-profile auctions where their prices would make even the most seasoned collectors pause. Stories circulated about who had them and how they'd been kept. Some were said to be locked away in safes, passed down through families like precious heirlooms. Others, heartbreakingly, were rumored to have been lost, given away by mistake, or discarded during moves. The idea that such a priceless piece of Pokémon history could be sitting unnoticed in a box in someone's attic became a favorite daydream for collectors everywhere. But the allure of Pikachu Illustrator wasn't just about rarity. It was about connection. It was about the idea that this card had been created not for the richest collector, nor the most competitive player, but for the dreamers, for the kids who sat at their desks, sketching Pokémon on scrap paper, imagining what it would be like if their art became part of the Pokémon world. It represented a celebration of creativity at a time when the Pokémon phenomenon was still finding its voice, expanding from a video game and trading cards series into a multifaceted global culture. The card's history only made it more mythical. For years, official records about its distribution were scarce. Its print run wasn't widely publicized, and with so few in circulation, many collectors weren't even sure it was real. Online forums in the early 2000s would occasionally light up with grainy photographs of a supposed Pikachu Illustrator card, the community split between believers and skeptic now. It wasn't until auction houses began verifying and selling authenticated copies that its existence was firmly cemented in the public record. As those sales began to make headlines, the card's reputation as the holy grail of Pokémon collecting was solidified. Prices climbed into the tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, with one particularly pristine copy famously selling for over $250,000. Each sale came with its own wave of fascination. Who owned it? How had it survived in such perfect condition? Where had it been all these years? The stories surrounding each individual card became just as compelling as the card itself. And yet, beyond the spectacle of high-stakes auctions and eye-watering price tags, Pikachu Illustrator remained beloved for what it symbolized. It was a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things aren't those designed to be valuable. It wasn't made to be a collector's item. It wasn't intended to be a prize traded for stacks of cash decades later. It was a simple, heartfelt reward for kids who loved Pokémon enough to pick up a pencil and bring their favorite creatures to life on paper. Even now, it's hard not to be enchanted by its story. The image of Pikachu joyfully scribbling away feels timeless. It's a celebration of creativity, playfulness, and youthful passion, all captured in a single piece of glossy cardstock. The kind of thing that even if you never owned one, even if you never laid eyes on a real copy, you'd still remember the first time you heard about it. There's something quietly comforting in that. In a hobby where rarity often equates to value, and where collectors sometimes chase cards for their worth alone. Pikachu Illustrator stands as a reminder of why so many fell in love with Pokémon in the first place. It wasn't about money or completing a set or winning tournaments. It was about stories, about adventure, about sitting with friends, and imagining a world where anything was possible, where the creatures you dreamed up might one day be part of the game. And in a way, Pikachu Illustrator made that real. It was proof that the world of Pokémon wasn't just for the players and the watchers, but for the creators too. That if you dreamed hard enough and drew often enough, you might leave your mark on that world. Decades later, as new cards come and go, and as each generation finds its own favorites, Pikachu Illustrator remains. Not just as a trophy card for the ultra-wealthy, but as a symbol, a tiny, shimmering promise that the magic of those early days, the sense of wonder, of possibility, of scribbling out your favorite Pokémon in the margins of your school notebook still matters. Even among today's vast collection of rare and valuable cards, from holographic legendaries to limited run promotional exclusives, none carry quite the same quiet, heartfelt magic. And maybe that's why it continues to capture imaginations. Because even though most of us will never see one in person, the story is enough. The idea that it exists, tucked away in a collector's vault or a dusty box in a childhood bedroom, is strangely reassuring. It reminds us that somewhere, out there, pieces of those simpler days still survive. That not everything is lost to time, and that the things we treasured as kids, not for their value, but for the joy they brought us, still matter. That even in a world as fast-moving and constantly changing as ours, a little card with a picture of Pikachu holding a paintbrush can still mean something. And maybe, late at night, as you drift off to sleep, you'll find yourself wondering where those long-lost Illustrator cards might be now. Who holds them? What stories do they carry? How many afternoons did those cards sit on a desk next to sketchbooks and crumpled drawings? A prize for a kid who loved Pokémon enough to turn their imagination into art. And maybe you'll smile, remembering the way those stories made you feel. The quiet excitement, the magic and the mystery. Because that's the true power of Pikachu Illustrator. Not in its rarity, not in its market price, but in its ability to spark a memory, to remind us of a time when magic came in unexpected forms, and when the simplest things could become treasures. And in the end, that's what makes it the Holy Grail. Not the highest price, not the hardest to find, but the one card that still, after all, these years makes hearts stir and imaginations wander. If the early years of the Pokémon trading card game had a rebellious streak, a shadowy corner where mischief mingled with menace, it was the Team Rocket set. Released in 2000, this expansion wasn't like the cheerful, bright-eyed collections that came before it, where jungle and fossil sets gave us cards of majestic birds and friendly creatures frolicking in the wild. Team Rocket felt like something darker, a little more dangerous, a little more thrilling. And right at the heart of it swam one of the most iconic and quietly unsettling cards of its era, Dark Gyarados. Now, if you'd only known Gyarados from the video games or the animated series, you probably thought of it as a fearsome, powerful sea serpent. The classic tale of the weak, splash-happy Magikarp evolving into a raging, dragon-like powerhouse was one of the most satisfying glow-ups in gaming history. But in the Team Rocket set, things took a different turn. Here, Gyarados wasn't a majestic terror of the sea. It was a dark, brooding creature, coiled in shadows, eyes gleaming with something more sinister than simple rage. It wasn't just powerful. It was dangerous. The card's artwork captured this perfectly, illustrated by the brilliant Mitsuhiro Arata, the same artist behind the iconic base set. Charizard, Dark Gyarados, was shown emerging from inky black waters, its long serpentine body partially obscured by mist and darkness. Its expression was fierce, but in a way that suggested calculation rather than blind fury. This wasn't a creature you stumbled upon by accident. It was a predator lying in wait. What made the Team Rocket set so special and so beloved by collectors even now was its theme. It was the first set to truly explore the idea of villainy within the Pokémon world. Team Rocket themselves were the perpetual troublemakers of the franchise always. Scheming, always stealing, always finding themselves sent blasting off again. But the cards bearing their name brought a different kind of tone to the game. The dark prefix on many of the Pokémon cards in this set didn't just refer to their alignment or personality. It was a glimpse into what happened when Pokémon fell under the control of less than noble trainers. Dark Gyarados wasn't just Gyarados with a new paint job. It had a different story. In the lore of the set, these dark Pokémon had been captured, trained, and sometimes twisted by Team Rocket for their own purposes. They were altered, not just in stats, but in spirit. Their artwork reflected this too, with darker color palettes, more aggressive postures, and a general sense of unease. Dark, Gyarados in particular, felt heavy with implied history, a creature already known for its violent outbursts, now paired with a criminal organization. It was both thrilling and a little unsettling. And for young collectors at the time, that edge was irresistible. There was something undeniably cool about having a dark Pokémon in your deck. It was like being a little bit bad without actually getting in trouble. You weren't just training Pokémon, you were commanding creatures of shadow. And Dark Gyarados, with its glimmering holofoil and menacing presence, quickly became one of the must-haves of the set. It helped that the Team Rocket set itself was packed with personality. The packaging was darker, with artwork featuring sneering, grins from Jesse, James, and Meow. Even the booster packs felt a little edgier, like you were about to open a secret dossier on Pokémon gone rogue. The set introduced several fan favorites, including Dark Charizard and Dark Dragonite. But there was something about Dark Gyarados that lingered. Maybe it was because Gyarados had always been a symbol of change, of weak to strong, of overlooked to unstoppable. And seeing that twisted into something darker tapped into our childhood imaginations in a way few cards could. Adding to its allure was the fact that it was a holographic rare. That meant every booster pack you opened came with the hope, however slim, that you might find that shimmering dark Gyarados waiting inside. The rush of flipping through commons and uncommons, heart pounding as you neared the rare slot, was a feeling familiar to every collector of the era. Most times it would be a plain trainer card or a dark electrode. But sometimes it would be him, coiled, gleaming, glowering. And if you were one of the lucky few, that day felt a little bit like Christmas morning. Like many cards from that era, Dark Gyarados also had a promotional counterpart distributed during special events and tournaments. These versions featured a distinctive pre-release stamp, and for collectors, those tiny differences made all the difference. A pre-release Dark Gyarados wasn't just a cool card. It was a badge of honor, proof you'd been there, that you were part of the scene when Pokémon was at its cultural peak. Of course, like every legendary card, Dark Gyarados came with its share of schoolyard myths. Some kids claimed the holofoil shimmered differently if you held it under moonlight. Others insisted it was stronger than any base set holographic, and a few swore. They knew a kid whose cousin's friend's neighbor had a misprinted Dark Gyarados with a missing name or upside-down foil. Whether those stories were true didn't matter. The whispers kept the magic alive. Even now, decades later, Dark Gyarados holds a special place in the hearts of collectors. Not because it was the most valuable, though a mint-condition first edition copy will still fetch a respectable price, but because it captured a feeling. A moment in time when the Pokémon trading card game was evolving, testing boundaries, and introducing darker, more mature themes without losing its playful heart. The entire team, Rocket Set, in fact, remains a fan favorite for that reason. It was the first expansion to suggest that maybe the Pokémon world wasn't always sunshine and friendship, that maybe there were shadows in those forests and secrets in those labs. And for kids growing up in that era, just beginning to dip their toes into stories with a little more edge, it was the perfect gateway. The set also introduced new gameplay mechanics and strategies, including cards like Here Comes Team Rocket, which would change the usual rules of play in sneaky, unpredictable ways. It wasn't just about collecting anymore. It was about disrupting, about plotting, about building decks that could throw a little chaos into the mix. And Dark Gyarados fit right into that philosophy. Its Pokemon Power Final Beam, which activated upon fainting, dealt a hefty dose of retaliatory damage, a perfect mirror to its lore as a creature of vengeance and fury. For many players, Dark Gyarados wasn't just a cool card to look at. It was a strategic asset, a threat your opponent had to weigh carefully. Knock it out, and you might take a hit yourself. Leave it alone, and it could unleash its bite turn after turn. It was, in every sense, a card designed to make your opponent uneasy, which in a set themed around villains felt beautifully appropriate. And like so many classic cards, its appeal wasn't just in stats or abilities, but in what it represented. It was a card for the kids who liked their stories a little darker, who rooted for the misunderstood, the outcasts, the creatures lurking in the shadows. It let those kids imagine a version of the Pokemon world that wasn't quite so neat and tidy, where good didn't always triumph right away, where sometimes the monsters were allowed to be monsters. That's the beauty of cards like Dark Gyarados. They aren't just relics of a game. They're snapshots of the stories we told ourselves, the little worlds we built around them. Even now, holding a Dark Gyarados feels like a portal back to those afternoons on the school playground, huddled around a binder, swapping cards and swapping stories, arguing over whether dark Pokemon were actually evil or just misunderstood, debating whether Gyarados was cooler than Dragonite, wondering what it would be like to be a member of Team Rocket, commanding a deck full of shadowy creatures and scheming your way to victory. Decades have passed, and the game has grown in ways we could never have imagined back then. But the cards from that era, especially ones like Dark Gyarados, still carry weight. Not because of what they're worth, but because of the memories they hold. The friends we made, the battles we fought, the way a single piece of holographic cardboard could spark hours of storytelling. And somewhere in a box tucked away in a closet, or carefully sleeved in an old binder, Dark Gyarados still waits, coiled in darkness. A reminder that even in a world built for heroes, there's room for shadows. And sometimes, those are the stories we remember best. There are legends in every card game. Stories of cards so rare, so different, that their names are spoken with a mixture of awe and disbelief. In the world of Pokémon, where so many of the early classics glimmered with familiar holographic flair, there came a card that didn't just shimmer, it rebelled. It flipped the rules of shine, turned expectations inside out, and became one of the most talked about, whispered about treasures of its era. That card was Shining Charizard. It was more than a rare pull. It was a renegade. A card so unique it broke convention the moment it left the printer. Not because of its power, though it had plenty of that. Not because of its rarity, though it was rare enough to make kids trade entire binders for a glimpse of one. No, it was because Shining Charizard did something no other card in the set dared. It took the part of a Pokemon card that was usually the canvas, the illustration itself, and made it shimmer. The background was left matte, muted, while the Charizard at its center gleamed like molten glass. The effect was subtle, but electric. The first time you saw it, you knew it was something different. In a sea of cards where the borders gleamed and the backgrounds danced with rainbow prisms, here was a card where the creature alone shone like a creature made of light. It felt like holding a secret, a treasure minted not for the masses, but for the lucky and the persistent. Shining Charizard made its debut in the Neo Destiny expansion, released into 2002, a set already rich with the concept of shining. Pokemon ultra-rare variants of familiar creatures, their colors altered, their illustrations transformed. It was a bold new idea for the game at the time. While other sets had explored darkness and menace, Neo Destiny sought the mystical, the exceptional, and within that shimmering collection, Shining Charizard was king. The artwork, created by Ken Sugimori, one of Pokemon's original concept artists, was simple, elegant, and striking. A silvery white Charizard, its wings stretched in mid-flight, its body turned away as if in defiance, against a dark, star-speckled void. No battle scene, no fire-lit background, just this lone, gleaming figure, luminous against the dark. It was a portrait of rebellion and grace. Unlike its base-set counterpart, famous for being fiery and feral, mouth agape and claws raised, Shining Charizard was distant, almost aloof. It didn't need to roar to command attention. Its silence did the talking. There was a kind of unspoken story there, as if this Charizard had stepped out of the light, leaving behind the constraints of trainers and battles and league rules, content to soar in its own luminous way. And that, perhaps, was part of its charm. Shining Charizard felt like a secret chapter in the Pokemon mythos, a rebel existing outside the known rules of evolution and rarity. And because of that, it became one of the most sought-after cards in the game's history. But what truly cemented its place in playground legend wasn't just the card itself, it was the odds. You see, in those days, the odds of pulling a shining Pokemon, let alone a shining Charizard, were astronomical. Estimates placed the chance at roughly 1 in several hundred packs. For kids scraping together pocket change for a single booster at the local store, it might as well have been 1 in a million. And yet, every pack held a tiny, impossible hope. Every crinkle of foil, every shuffle of cards was a heartbeat's pause, a breath held just a little tighter. You'd pass over commons, shuffle through uncommons, and when you reached that final card, the world seemed to narrow. Most times it would be a dark Crobat, or an energy card, or a trainer card you'd already seen a dozen times. But once in a long, long while, the light would catch in just the right way. And there it would be. For the kids who were lucky enough to pull one, it was an event, the kind of moment that still gets told decades later at gatherings and online forums. The stories all sound a little alike. A booster bought on a whim. A pack slipped in with allowance money. An unexpected pull during a trade night at a friend's house. And when Shining Charizard appeared, it was like time slowed down. Some kids immediately sleeved it, treating it like sacred glass. Others, desperate for validation, showed it off to anyone within, shouting distance. There were those who swore it made their deck invincible, and those who tucked it away, never risking it in a match for fear of bending its corners. And a few, as stories go, traded it away for a binder full of lesser hollows, only to spend years regretting it. Its scarcity, both real and imagined, made it the stuff of legend. The whispers on the playground grew. Did you hear about the kid who pulled one in his first pack? There's a rumor there's a misprint out there with no star symbol. I heard if you get one and trade it back to the store, they'll give you a whole booster box. None of these tales were true, of course. But like all good legends, truth wasn't the point. It was the storytelling, the possibility. Part of Shining Charizard's allure was its place in a moment. By 2002, the original Pokemon craze was shifting. The first wave of collectors was getting older, some moving on to other interests, others clinging tighter to the cards that had defined their childhoods. Neo Destiny and the shining Pokemon within it felt like a gift to the faithful, a final glittering chapter in the golden era, before new generations, new mechanics, and new legendaries reshaped the landscape. And in that sense, Shining Charizard was more than a card. It was a keepsake, a token from a time when the world of Pokemon still felt mysterious, vast, and full of secrets just waiting to be uncovered. The way its illustrations suggested distance and detachment mirrored how some players felt that this game, this hobby, had given them something precious, even if they couldn't quite explain what it was. In the years since, as the Pokémon TCG exploded into global tournaments, appraisals, and auctions, Shining Charizard's legend only grew. Pristine copies, especially those graded at perfect condition, began fetching staggering prices. Collectors sought them not just for their value, but for the nostalgia they carried. Holding one was like holding a fragment of childhood magic, a shimmering reminder of afternoons spent huddled over card binders and wild-eyed tales of rare pulls and schoolyard trades. Even now, its presence carries a quiet weight. Mention Shining Charizard in any group of Pokémon fans and you'll see eyes light up. There's always someone who remembers it or chased it, or knew a kid who claimed to have one. It's one of those rare cards that transcends its stats. It doesn't matter what its attacks did or how it fared in competitive play. It mattered that it existed, that it was there, out in the world, waiting to be found. And what made it so special was that despite its rarity, despite its legend, it wasn't entirely unreachable. The odds were long, yes. The prices now are high, but it existed in booster packs you could buy at a local store. It was something that, for a moment in time, any kid could hold in their hands. And there's something quietly beautiful about that. Today, Shining Charizard remains one of the most iconic cards of its era, not just for its holographic defiance or its scarcity, but for the way it captured a feeling, a little spark of rebellion, a flicker of light in a shadowed world, a reminder that even in a game built on rules and rarity tiers, sometimes a card could come along and change the way you looked at the whole thing. And maybe that's what keeps it legendary. Not the price tags or auction records, but the memories of cracked booster packs and hurried trades, of holding up a card to catch the light just right, of telling yourself that if you found one, you would never let it go. Or maybe you would, for the right story. Because that's the thing about cards like Shining Charizard. They're never just cards. They're little pieces of the past, paper and ink. And shimmer, yes, but also afternoons on playgrounds, sleepovers spent trading by flashlight, dreams of finding that one impossible pull. And even now, years and years later, it's those stories that shine brightest of all. In the earliest days of the Pokémon trading card game, when every booster pack crackled with the promise of a legendary pull and lunchrooms buzzed with tales of trades and triumphs, one card seemed to command the spotlight. Charizard, with its flaming breath and fiery temperament, stole hearts and headlines alike. Its holographic shimmer became a beacon, a prize so coveted that it eclipsed nearly every other card in its path. But just beneath that blaze of glory stood another titan, every bit as powerful, every bit as essential to the game's lore, and its name was Blastoise. Blastoise was no stranger to prominence. As the final evolution of Squirtle, one of the original starter Pokémon, it had already earned a special place in the hearts of players. In the video games, Blastoise was the stalwart defender, a tank capable of withstanding assaults and retaliating with overwhelming force. Its twin water cannons made it an iconic figure, a creature built for resilience and raw power. And when the base set cards hit store shelves in 1999, Blastoise was poised to become a star. The card itself was a thing of beauty, illustrated by Ken Sugimori, the same visionary artist who brought so many of the original 151 Pokémon to life. Blastoise was depicted mid-roar, its sturdy blue form ready for battle. Its water cannons gleamed against a stormy, swirling background, and the holographic foil lent the entire scene a sense of motion and weight. Holding it felt like holding a fragment of the Pokémon world, a piece of that larger story where creatures clashed and friendships were forged. What set Blastoise apart from its fiery counterpart wasn't just its type or stats, but its role in the trading card game's meta. While Charizard's high damage output made it a thrilling attacker, Blastoise was the engine behind countless competitive decks. Its Pokémon power, Rain Dance, allowed players to attach as many water energy cards as they liked to their water-type Pokémon during their turn. In a game where energy attachment was typically limited to one per turn, this ability was game-changing. With Blastoise on the field, players could flood their side with water energy, powering up heavy hitters like Gyarados and Lapras in a single explosive turn. It turned matches on their head, transforming what might have been a slow, attritional battle into a sudden, overwhelming wave of offense. Competitive players quickly recognized Blastoise's potential, and rain dance decks became a staple in early tournaments. Yet, for all its strategic value and battlefield prowess, Blastoise often found itself overshadowed in the public eye. Charizard's dramatic artwork, combined with its association with Ash's unpredictable companion in the animated series, captured the collective imagination. Blastoise was quieter, less flashy, a workhorse rather than a showboat. It was the card you built your deck around, not the one you framed above your bed. But those who played competitively knew its worth. Veteran players would speak of rain dance decks with a kind of reverence, recalling matches won through careful setup and precise execution. A well-timed Blastoise could turn certain defeat into sudden. Victory and its presence on the table often meant the tempo of the game shifted instantly. The stories from those early tournaments are filled with tales of Blastoise pulling games from the brink, of desperate hands turning into devastating plays, of opponents caught off guard by the sudden flood of water energy, watching as their prized Pokémon fell beneath a relentless tide of hydro pumps and surf attacks. In those moments, Blastoise wasn't just a card, it was a legend. Collectors, too, began to appreciate its value. While Charizard basked in the limelight, Blastoise quietly maintained a steady, enduring appeal. Its holographic card, with that distinctive stormy background, became a staple of serious collections. And over the years, as the Pokémon TCG expanded and evolved, nostalgia only deepened its allure. There was a certain comfort in Blastoise. In a world of ever-shifting metas and new mechanics, it remained a symbol of the game's roots, a reminder of a time when things were simpler, when booster packs cost a few dollars, and the biggest worry was whether your parents would let you trade your prized holographic for a stack of commons, and a rare you just had to have. Even now, decades later, Blastoise retains its quiet dignity. Modern reprints and anniversary sets have paid homage to the original design, and each new iteration carries a trace of that early magic. For many, it was the first holographic card they ever pulled, the first piece of the Pokémon world they could hold in their hands. And while the world may still sing the praises of Charizard, there's a special kind of satisfaction in remembering the overlooked titans, the cards that weren't always the loudest or flashiest, but that shaped the game in their own steady, unstoppable way. Blastoise was one of those cards, a cornerstone of strategy, a beacon of resilience. Because sometimes it's not the ones in the spotlight who leave the deepest mark. Sometimes it's the quiet guardians, the ones who stand firm, weathering the storm, and quietly carrying generations of memories with them. Base set, Blastoise was one of those guardians. And for those who remember, it always will be. In the earliest days of the Pokémon trading card game, when every booster pack crackled with the promise of a legendary pull and lunchrooms buzzed with tales of trades and triumphs, one card seemed to command the spotlight. Charizard, with its flaming breath and fiery temperament, stole hearts and headlines alike. Its holographic shimmer became a beacon, a prize so coveted that it eclipsed nearly every other card in its path. But just beneath that blaze of glory stood another titan, every bit as powerful, every bit as essential to the game's lore. And its name was Blastoise. Blastoise was no stranger to prominence. As the final evolution of Squirtle, one of the original starter Pokémon, it had already earned a special place in the hearts of players. In the video games, Blastoise was the stalwart defender, a tank capable of withstanding assaults and retaliating with overwhelming force. Its twin water cannons made it an iconic figure, a creature built for resilience and raw power. And when the base set cards hit store shelves in 1999, Blastoise was poised to become a star. The card itself was a thing of beauty, illustrated by Ken Sugimori, the same visionary artist who brought so many of the original 151 Pokémon to life. Blastoise was depicted mid-roar, its sturdy blue form ready for battle. Its water cannons gleamed against a stormy, swirling background, and the holographic foil lent the entire scene a sense of motion and weight. Holding it felt like holding a fragment of the Pokémon world, a piece of that larger story where creatures clashed and friendships were forged. What set Blastoise apart from its fiery counterpart wasn't just its type or stats, but its role in the trading card game's meta. While Charizard's high damage output made it a thrilling attacker, Blastoise was the engine behind countless competitive decks. Its Pokémon power, Rain Dance, allowed players to attach as many water energy cards as they liked to their water-type Pokémon during their turn. In a game where energy attachment was typically limited to one per turn, this ability was game-changing. With Blastoise on the field, players could flood their side with water energy, powering up heavy hitters like Gyarados and Lapras in a single explosive turn. It turned matches on their head, transforming what might have been a slow attritional battle into a sudden, overwhelming wave of offense. Competitive players quickly recognized Blastoise's potential, and Rain Dance decks became a staple in early tournaments. Yet for all its strategic value and battlefield prowess, Blastoise often found itself overshadowed in the public eye. Charizard's dramatic artwork, combined with its association with Ash's unpredictable companion in the animated series, captured the collective imagination. Blastoise was quieter, less flashy, a workhorse rather than a showboat. It was the card you built your deck around, not the one you framed above your bed. But those who played competitively knew its worth. Veteran players would speak of Rain Dance decks with a kind of reverence, recalling matches won through careful setup and precise execution. A well-timed Blastoise could turn certain defeat into sudden victory, and its presence on the table often meant the tempo of the game shifted instantly. The stories from those early tournaments are filled with tales of Blastoise pulling games from the brink, of desperate hands turning into devastating plays, of opponents caught off guard by the sudden flood of water energy, watching as their prized Pokémon fell beneath a relentless tide of hydro pumps and surf attacks. In those moments, Blastoise wasn't just a card. It was a legend. Collectors, too, began to appreciate its value. While Charizard basked in the limelight, Blastoise quietly maintained a steady, enduring appeal. Its holographic card, with that distinctive stormy background, became a staple of serious collections. And over the years, as the Pokémon TCG expanded and evolved, nostalgia only deepened its allure. There was a certain comfort in Blastoise. In a world of ever-shifting metas and new mechanics, it remained a symbol of the game's roots. A reminder of a time when things were simpler, when booster packs cost a few dollars, and the biggest worry was whether your parents would let you trade your prized holographic for a stack of commons and a rare you just had to have. Even now, decades later, Blastoise retains its quiet dignity. Modern reprints and anniversary sets have paid homage to the original design, and each new iteration carries a trace of that early magic. For many, it was the first holographic card they ever pulled, the first piece of the Pokémon world they could hold in their hands. And while the world may still sing the praises of Charizard, there's a special kind of satisfaction in remembering the overlooked titans. The cards that weren't always the loudest or flashiest, but that shaped the game in their own steady, unstoppable way. Blastoise was one of those cards. A cornerstone of strategy, a beacon of resilience. Because sometimes, it's not the ones in the spotlight who leave the deepest mark. Sometimes, it's the quiet guardians. The ones who stand firm, weathering the storm, and quietly carrying generations of memories with them. Base set Blastoise was one of those guardians. And for those who remember, it always will be. And when you look at its original holo pattern today, it's easy to get swept up in nostalgia. The sparkle of that stormy foil background feels like catching light on waves of dusk. It isn't as bold as Charizard's searing flame, but it's steadier, enduring, a shimmering testament to power that doesn't need to shout. And that, in its own way, makes it even more remarkable. In collections worldwide, old and new, you'll find Blastoise sleeved lovingly beside its flashier counterparts, a quiet titan still standing tall. Among the countless cards that have passed through the hands of Pokémon fans, collectors, and dreamers alike, few have left a mark as curious and quietly enduring as Misty's Tears. It wasn't a card that shattered tournament metas. It wasn't a card that fetched tens of thousands at auction. It wasn't even a card most kids rush to trade for on playgrounds. Yet it holds a strange and tender place in the history of the Pokémon trading card game. A card wrapped not in rarity, but in emotion and controversy. When Pokémon first arrived in Japan in the mid to late 90s, its explosive popularity was immediate. From video games to anime to trading cards, it didn't take long for the world of Pokémon to sweep through every aspect of pop culture. And with it came an artistic range as varied as the creatures themselves. Some cards were fierce and bold, some playful and cartoonish, while others occasionally ventured into the unexpectedly vulnerable. Misty's Tears was one of those. In its original Japanese version, the card depicted gym leader Misty, a beloved character from both the video games and the animated series, shown with visible tears streaming down her face. In the background, a faithful Staryu floated nearby as though offering silent comfort. But what drew attention wasn't just Misty's sorrow. It was the way she was portrayed. The illustration showed Misty clutching her arms to her chest, unclothed from the shoulders up. Her sorrow laid bare in both expression and form. It was a moment of unusual vulnerability, especially for a franchise aimed at younger audiences. To Japanese players and fans, the card was less provocative than it was poignant. It told a quiet story, one of loss, perhaps, or heartbreak. A brief, melancholic glimpse into the life of a character usually known for her fiery attitude and fierce determination. For many, it was a favorite card, not because of its power, but because of its ability to capture raw emotion in such a simple, arresting way. But as the Pokémon phenomenon made its way across the seas to the West, cultural lines and expectations began to blur. When it came time to localize the Gym Heroes expansion for English-speaking audiences, the team at Wizards of the Coast took one look at the original Misty's Tears illustration and made a decision. The card, as it existed in Japan, wouldn't be coming over in the same form. And so, for the Western release, Misty's Tears was redrawn entirely. The new artwork replaced Misty's vulnerable posture and tear-streaked face with a cheerful image of the gym leader playfully hugging a Psyduck. Gone were the tears, the rawness, and the haunting simplicity of the original. In its place, a light-hearted, almost slapstick scene that seemed designed to raise a smile rather than a pang of sorrow. It was, in many ways, an understandable decision. Cultural sensibilities differ, and what might seem tender in one place can feel inappropriate in another. The Pokémon brand, especially in its early Western years, worked hard to maintain a squeaky clean, family-friendly image. The original Misty's Tears card, though innocent by intent, carried a visual weight that risked controversy. But while the change may have smoothed the waters for international release, it did something else too. It transformed the original, Misty's Tears, into a legend of its own, whispered about in collecting circles, shared in grainy internet scans, and hunted by fans who loved uncovering the lost and the altered. For those who sought out the original Japanese version, it became a kind of forbidden treasure. Not because it was scandalous, though the rumors and urban legends surrounding it certainly amplified that reputation, but because it was a relic of a different era. A moment in Pokémon history when the storytelling through its card art was rawer, less polished, and unafraid to dip into moments of sadness. And really, it wasn't the supposed controversy that made Misty's Tears so memorable. It was the story behind it. The way a simple piece of cardboard, ink and foil could reflect a character's inner world so elegantly. Fans speculated endlessly about what the tears meant. Was Misty mourning a fallen Pokémon? Heartbroken over a battle lost or a friend departed? The card left it unsaid. And in that silence, it found its power. Collecting stories are filled with people who remember the first time they saw that card. Some in magazines, others through older cousins who'd smuggled back Japanese packs from travels abroad. The image lingered, not for shock, but for its uncommon stillness. In a franchise built on battles, energy cards, and cheerful faces, here was a card about grief, about pausing, about the quieter parts of life. As the years passed and the Pokémon TCG ballooned into a global juggernaut with thousands upon thousands of unique cards, Misty's Tears retained a cult following. Collectors who loved not just the flashiest holos or the rarest promos, but the cards with stories. The ones you could hold and feel something unexpected. In online forums and late-night trading meetups, fans would talk about it, share grainy scans, debunk or confirm rumors about banned cards and misprints. Misty's Tears always came up in those conversations. Not because it was the rarest, but because it was one of the few that made people pause. Today, the original Japanese Misty's Tears is considered a prized curiosity among serious collectors. Its market value fluctuates, driven not by tournament viability or grading rarity, but by nostalgia and story. It represents a moment in time when the Pokémon card game was still finding its footing, still experimenting with tone and theme. And while the Western version is bright and cheerful, there's something quietly enduring about the original. It reminds us that even in a world of monsters and magic attacks, there's room for tenderness. That sometimes it's okay to let characters grieve, to let them be more than brave faces and battle cries. For those who have held both versions side by side, the contrast is striking. One a burst of cartoonish levity, the other a moment of unguarded humanity. Neither is inherently better, but the original carries with it a kind of whispered history, a story of what might have been. And maybe that's what makes Misty's Tears so captivating even decades later. It's a card you don't just collect. It's one you remember, one you talk about. A small, tender fragment of a sprawling universe that dared, if only briefly, to let a beloved character feel sadness without explanation. It's that story, as much as the artwork, that continues to echo through the world of Pokémon cards, passed from one generation of fans to the next. A quiet, misty memory that reminds us sometimes the rarest things we can find in this hobby aren't gold stars or flawless grades, but moments of simple human truth hidden in the art of a game. And what makes Misty's Tears even more fascinating is how it became a touchstone for a conversation bigger than just Pokémon, cards. It quietly highlighted the delicate balance of storytelling, art, and cultural expectation within a global franchise. Pokémon, at its heart, has always been about connections between trainers and Pokémon, between friends, between generations of players. And sometimes, those connections meant acknowledging the softer, quieter emotions that come along for the ride. Collectors who sought out Misty's Tears weren't chasing scandal nor controversy. They were chasing a kind of emotional honesty, rarely seen in a trading card game. While most cards focused on battles, evolutions, and abilities, Misty's Tears offered something more ephemeral, a moment of stillness, of loss, of sorrow unspoken. And perhaps it spoke to people, not because of what it showed, but because of what it suggested. The story behind those tears remained ambiguous, open to interpretation, leaving room for personal meaning to bloom. Some fans believed the tears hinted at a lost Pokémon, perhaps one Misty cared for deeply, taken from her through battle or circumstance. Others imagined it as a reflection of the pressures of gym leadership, a moment of quiet breakdown in the solitude of one's own company. And then there were those who simply saw it as a poetic image, a reminder that even the bravest among us have moments when the weight of life presses a little too heavily on the heart. For a card so simple in function, one that merely allowed a player to discard a card from their hand, to draw two new ones, it carried a disproportionate emotional weight. In tournament decks, its impact was negligible, but in personal collections, it carried stories. Every crease, every scuff on its glossy surface spoke of travels between binders, swaps, secret trades on school grounds, and late-night trades among siblings. In that way, it became a personal artifact as much as a collector's piece. And it wasn't alone in its quiet fame. Other cards, too, found themselves wrapped in whispered stories of censorship and lost designs. But Misty's Tears endured because of its tender simplicity. No wild pose, no shocking imagery, just a girl and her sorrow, captured in a fleeting moment, immortalized on a small piece of cardstock. Decades on, if you browse collectors' markets in Tokyo, or visit small hobby shops nestled in the back streets of Akihabara, you'll still find it. Tucked away in glass display cases, sometimes marked with a discreet little note in the corner. Controversial Mysticard. Its value has risen and fallen with trends, but its mystique remains constant. Not because it was a forbidden object, but because it was a relic of unfiltered storytelling in a space that seldom allows for it. It stands as proof that even in worlds built on colorful monsters and fantastical adventures, real emotions have a place. A flicker of sorrow can be just as memorable as a victorious roar. And Misty's Tears continues to remind fans, old and new, that even in a game designed for battles and strategy, it's the cards with heart that endure longest. For many collectors today, rediscovering Misty's Tears feels like uncovering a tiny time capsule, a fragment of a softer, more introspective Pokémon era before the waves of expansions, gimmicks, and competitive metas took hold. Back when card collecting was about mystery and discovery, about flipping through unfamiliar foreign cards, deciphering unknown attacks, and stumbling upon images that didn't just show battles, but moments of unexpected depth. And maybe that's why, when fans gather to trade, to reminisce, to swap stories of their childhoods framed by booster pack openings and playground negotiations, Misty's Tears almost always finds its way into the conversation. Not as a cautionary tale, nor as an oddity, but as a gentle reminder of the subtle human threads that quietly weave through even the most fantastical of worlds. There are cards in the Pokémon trading card game that are memorable because of their power. There are those remembered for their rarity, their strategic brilliance, or their controversies. And then there are cards remembered because they felt like myths in your hands. Cards that didn't just depict a creature, but told a story, evoked a world, and carried with them the weight of ancient, swirling legends. Lugia, the guardian of the skies from Neo Genesis, is one of those cards. When Neo Genesis arrived at the turn of the new millennium, it marked a new era for the Pokémon TCG. The first major expansion, beyond the original 151, it introduced a new generation of creatures from the Johto region, new game mechanics, and a fresh sense of adventure for a fan base eager to see what lay beyond. And sitting at the heart of it was Lugia, a legendary Pokémon whose very existence seemed to promise that the world of Pokémon was far larger, older, and more mysterious than any of us had imagined. Lugia was not a creature of land or fire or earthbound struggle. It was a guardian of skies and oceans, a keeper of balance. In the games and animated films, it was depicted as a powerful, noble figure, slumbering in the depths of the sea until called upon to calm raging storms or settle clashes among the elemental birds. And its trading card captured that majesty in a single, unforgettable image. The illustration was a thing of quiet power. Against a shimmering, storm-gray holographic backdrop, Lugia emerged with wings, unfurled, a sleek silver-blue figure caught mid-flight, as though riding the gale itself. Its eyes gleamed with wisdom and resolve, a creature ancient yet timeless. Holding it in your hands felt less like possessing a tool for battle and more like cradling a small piece of legend. Collectors quickly recognized its significance. Even among the many beautiful cards of Neo Genesis, Lugia stood apart. Its stats were impressive, its art breathtaking, and its aura irresistible. It was a card that demanded attention not through garishness, but through grace. In the competitive TCG world, Lugia's prominence was mixed. It was a solid attacker with a potent elemental assault capable of dealing substantial damage. But it was the card's reputation and mythology that truly made it iconic. Or to own one was a rite of passage, a badge of honor in schoolyards and hobby shops. Players might have powerful decks, but the kid who pulled a holographic Lugia carried a certain mystique. Stories swirled around those lucky enough to find one. There were tales of impossible pulls on the last booster pack of the day, of trades made in whispers beneath bleachers, of the one kid who managed to land two in a single afternoon and became a playground legend. Lugia wasn't just a card, it was an event. And for good reason. Its holographic finish at the time was among the most striking in the game. The reflective silvery pattern seemed to shimmer like ocean waves under moonlight, giving the impression that Lugia might at any moment lift from the card and soar free into the sky. Its attack, Elemental Blast, was a nod to its role as a balancer of nature's forces, requiring multiple types of energy to unleash. Over the years, as new generations of players arrived and countless new expansions filled binders and shop shelves, Lugia retained its place in the pantheon of beloved classics. The card's value has seen the typical ebbs and flows of the collector's market, but its emotional resonance has remained constant. Even in battered, play-worn condition, a Neo Genesis Lugia still carries a kind of quiet magic. For many, the card is a reminder of childhood afternoons spent trading by the school gates, of booster packs purchased with carefully saved allowance, of sleepless nights wondering if tomorrow's pack would finally hold that elusive guardian. It's a card that encapsulates not just the excitement of collection, but the wonder of discovery. And then, of course, there's the film, Pokémon. The movie 2000 introduced Lugia to a wider audience, presenting it as a force of nature capable of calming the chaos between the legendary birds Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. The film gave depth to the card's legend, wrapping it in a cinematic aura of ancient prophecy and elemental harmony. Suddenly, that shimmering card wasn't just a piece of game strategy. It was a fragment of a much larger mythic tale. This connection between card and narrative made Lugia unique. It wasn't the only legendary to appear on cardboard, nor the only one tied to ancient stories. But it was perhaps the one that best embodied the idea of Pokémon as something older, grander, and deeper than a mere game. Lugia felt like a creature from myth, and its card felt like a tiny relic of that world. Collectors still speak of the thrill of seeing its silver shimmer tucked among a fan of freshly opened booster packs. A moment when the light would catch just right, and you'd see those distinctive wings, that keen gaze. For a heartbeat, the mundane world would fall away, and you'd be a part of something vaster, carried on ocean winds and ancient stories. In the decades since its release, Lugia has seen other cards, other versions, reimaginings in full art, secret rares, and promo, exclusives, yet, for many, the original Neo Genesis version remains the definitive one. There's something about its simplicity, the restrained color palette, the minimalistic pose, the ethereal background, that captures Lugia's character better than flashier successes. It's a card you don't just collect. It's one you remember, one you revisit in old binders, in stacks of childhood memories. And when rediscovered, it always seems to hold a little of that original wonder, a flicker of nostalgia, a trace of ancient ocean-swept air. Even today, it remains one of those cards that new players hear about from older siblings, from vintage collectors, from hushed conversations at card shops. The one you wished you'd pulled, the one you never quite forgot. Because in the end, that's what Lugia represents. Not just power, not just rarity, but memory. The quiet, shimmering weight of stories passed down, of legends told in hushed tone, of a creature who soared through skies and across tides and found a place in countless hearts through a single, breathtaking piece of cardboard. And somewhere, perhaps in an old shoebox, in a drawer lined with bubblegum wrappers and faded movie stubs, a Neo Genesis, Lugia waits. A relic of a time when each booster pack was a promise, when every card held a story, and when pulling a legend felt like touching the edge of the mythic sky itself. Tonight, we take a slow, dreamy stroll through the pages of a well-loved Pokémon card binder, not for the rarest cards or flashiest hollow pulls, but for the ones that stayed quietly by your side through the years. The sleepy favorites, the oddly bent, the ones with mysterious bite marks and smudged corners. It begins with a page of slowpoke cards, calm and dopey in the best way, followed by a proudly curated collection of pink Pokémon like Clefable and Chansey, joined oddly but lovingly by a Lickitung. Then come the hat bearers, Detective Pikachu, Festive Snorlax, and a custom crayon-drawn Magikarp in a top hat, each card chosen not for value but for sheer joy. Energies take center stage next, their plain designs now feeling foundational and honorable. And then there's the misprint page, Mo12 with 700 GP, a suspiciously Digimon-like Charmander, and a flea market favorite you convinced yourself was legit. One page is titled, If I Could Make a TV Show About These Six, I Would, featuring a team led by Ampharos and backed by Espeon, Politoed, Hitmontop, Delibird, and Togepi, a dream squad you imagined on wild adventures across Yocto. Then comes the Holiday Hollows section with Santa Pikachu and birthday cards marked gently in pencil, followed by the Survivors, cards that lived through backpacks, school bus spills, and laundry accidents, each crease and scratch telling a tiny legend. And finally, the page that started it all, a haphazard first layout of a hollow Machamp, Caterpie, and cereal box Meowth. Reminders of the moment you first slid those cards into plastic sleeves and unknowingly built a treasure chest of memories. There's no conclusion, just another turn of the binder page, and the soft sense that while you may drift off to sleep, the collection will keep spinning its quiet story, waiting for you to return. And as that well-worn binder page settles into place, your fingers instinctively flip to the next, like muscle memory from long ago, guiding you through a ritual you didn't even realize you'd memorized. This news section, it's not labeled, not organized, not even protected behind plastic, just a loose cluster of cards tucked between the sleeves, as if they refused to be categorized like little paper rebels with their own sleepy agenda. One of them slides out with ease, a Kabutops from the Neo Discovery set. Its art dark and dramatic, but its memory softer. A fossil that felt futuristic, an ancient creature that somehow made you feel powerful during a particularly forgettable science test in the 4th grade. Next to it, pressed nearly flat, is a jungle Pikachu with a crease across the middle, forever folded from the time you took it to school in your pocket for good luck and forgot it was there. Until after dodgeball. There's even a card you once thought was the rarest thing in existence, a shiny Gyarados from the Lake of Rage promo, not because of value or print run, but because it came in the same pack as a lollipop that turned your tongue blue. Around them are other outcasts and misfits, cards given to you by a cousin who was too old for Pokémon, or found under your bed years later, stuck to a Pokémon-themed sticker book with mysterious adhesive. And yet, despite their condition, despite the curled corners, faded edges, and that one with the coffee stain shaped suspiciously like a poke ball, they exude a quiet kind of charm, like long-lost friends who aged a little strangely but always remembered your name. You flip again and find yourself face to face with what you once called the villain's page, as a dark Alakazam glaring with psychic intensity, a Team Rocket's Meowth mid-scheme, and a Giovanni's Persian that looked like it belonged in a mafia movie. These weren't just cards, they were entire plot lines. You'd make up dramatic narratives where Koga kidnapped your starter, Pokemon or Sabrina turned your Squirtle into a statue, and you had to defeat them in an imaginary Elite Four constructed entirely out of couch cushions and old shoeboxes. On this same page sits a single, lonely Jesse and James card, slightly faded, but somehow defiant, like it always was. You remember how you and your best friend used to practice the Team Rocket motto before lunch, giggling through every prepare for trouble, even if nobody else was watching. And on nights like this, when your room was quiet, and the glow of a flashlight guided your binder expedition under the covers, those villains were just misunderstood friends in cool uniforms and their Pokemon, still kind of cooler than yours. Turning pages, you're suddenly bathed in a wave of sparkle, the hollow page. It's blinding in the most nostalgic way. Here lies your magneton from base set, forever misunderstood as a pile of spheres, but cherished for its lightning gleam. Next to it is a Nidoking, his toothy snarl softened by time, still looking like royalty in toxic purple. Your Hitmonlee from Fossil reflects the light oddly, its shine, worn slightly from years of overhandling. You just couldn't resist pulling it out, over and over, just to admire it. This page is a mix of heroes and has-beens. Your Poliwrath, forever wet-looking. Your Raichu, always in Pikachu's shadow, but never in yours. And your holographic Machamp with the iconic first edition stamp, the card every kid seemed to own, but none would ever trade. It gleams now like a lighthouse through fog, guiding your mind gently through memory's waters. And then, quietly in the corner, a non-hollow Butterfree. It doesn't sparkle, but its pastel wings and soft gaze earn it honorary status on this star-studded page. Why? Because one day, a classmate gave it to you after you dropped your tray in the cafeteria, and for reasons you never quite understood, you never forgot that gesture. Sometimes, it turns out, value isn't printed in the corner of the card. It's etched in the moment it came into your life. The page that follows is strange and silly, perhaps your most honest. The Pokémon that looked like snacks collection. You were clearly hungry when you put it together, and it shows. Swirlix with its cotton candy fuzz. Vanillite, the sentient ice cream cone you desperately wished was real. And Exeggcute, which you believed, for far too long, were actual scrambled eggs. There's even an oddish here. Not exactly edible, but always looked like it could be picked from a vegetable patch. These cards weren't powerful or rare or even particularly useful in the TCG, but they were yours, and they lived in your imagination rent-free. You once created an entire in-universe bakery staffed by Slurpuff and Combi, where Snorlax was the taste tester and Jigglypuff provided the ambiance by humming lullabies. It was a ridiculous, sugary dream world. And as your eyelids begin to grow heavy now, it still sounds like a place worth visiting. You flip again, and now comes a section held together with stickers, friendship, and a little bit of chaos. Your trade memories. Page. Here lies the card you swore you'd never trade. Until someone offered you a holographic Lapras and a slice of pizza. A slightly scuffed Arcanine sits here too, bearing the scars of its journey from that one kid in 3rd grade who insisted it was a super rare misprint because the font looked weird. There's a Rattata here that you actually traded for a holographic Clefairy, a deal so imbalanced that even you were shocked it happened. But you never looked back. There's joy in that page. Not in what you gained, but in how those cards passed through many hands, carrying bits of story, smudged fingerprints, and laughter. These weren't just trades. They were moments. The thrill of the bargain, the wide-eyed post-recess swap, the trust it took to hand over your prize and hope for the best, and nestled right in the middle, almost camouflaged between commons and half-peeled stickers, is a copy of your absolute weirdest card. A fake Charizard GX with 4000 GP and a move called Fire Destruction Hurricane Supreme. It's clearly fake. The colors are off. The art looks traced from a cereal box. And the font is Comic Sans. But oh, how you loved it. Because it felt like a secret power, like owning something nobody else did. You remember defending it fiercely, even when your older brother called it illegal. In your imaginary league, it won every match, and even now it sits proudly, defiant and shiny, because fake or not, it was part of your story. The next page is quietly emotional. Your retired heroes. Pokémon that had their moment in the spotlight and then slowly faded. From your decks, your team sheets, your lunchbox brag lists, there's a Feraligatr that led your water-type team for months until Kyogre came along. There's a Golem you once called the Boulder King, now scratched and left behind by more meta-competitive cards. But these were your champions. You remember naming them, assigning them roles, giving them personalities. That old Pharaoh, for instance, you insisted was your scout, the first into battle and the last out. You even made it a cardboard badge with your name on it. The glue is still there. Slightly sticky, slightly sweet, like the memories. Now comes the weird favorites page. Cards that nobody else liked, but you adored. Done sparse because it looked like it never knew what day it was. Pseudo-Wudo for being a tree that clearly wasn't fooling anyone. Corsola for just kind of floating through life, without any real sense of urgency. And then there's Stantler. Majestic, mysterious, mildly confusing. You had no strategy for these. Cards, no plan, you just liked them. They reminded you of pets you never had. Ideas you never quite finished, and characters from. Stories you told only in your head. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the most important collection of all, the one no one else understands but you. As the pages grow heavier, the binder slowing in your lap like it too is getting sleepy. You flip one final time to a page simply marked to be continued. It's empty, completely blank, except for one thing. A small drawing in the bottom corner, pencil faded but unmistakable. A sketch of you, tiny, happy, eyes wide, holding a pokeball in one hand and your binder in the other. The words "trainer for life" are scribbled above in your childhood handwriting. You don't remember drawing it, but you know it's yours. And it hits you gently but deeply that this binder isn't finished. It never was, because collecting wasn't just about cards. It was about time, capturing moments, gluing pieces of yourself onto cardboard and calling it a deck. And as your thoughts slow down, as the room softens into stillness, you realize that the story of your collection, the real one, never truly ends. It just turns a page. So, there you are, curled up with this binder that now feels like an extension of yourself. And though the "to be continued" page was blank, your fingers naturally keep going, even if there are no more official cards to turn. Instead, tucked loosely in the back, sleeve like a hidden treasure chest, are scraps of paper, hand-drawn cards, old Pokédex printouts, a faded sticker sheet, and a folded piece of notebook paper with the words "Top Secret Pokémon League" written in red crayon. You remember this? Oh yes, you do. This was your first custom expansion set, entirely illustrated during a weekend sleepover with a couple of friends, and a dangerous amount of juice boxes. One of the cards is named Super Takochu, a Pikachu wearing a taco costume with a move called Spicy Zap that causes your opponent to sneeze uncontrollably. There's a legendary bird made entirely of bubblegum and named Popcitrus, and a weird, vaguely threatening Butterfree evolution called Butterdoom. None of it made any sense, and that was the point. You and your friends didn't care about balance or legality or HP totals that broke the system. You cared about fun, and drawing and arguing over whether Charizard should be weak to water or to fizz. These cards were never sleeved, never scanned, never appraised, but they were loved, and for that, they earned a place in your heart's personal Hall of Fame. And beneath those hand-drawn masterpieces lies a strange relic, a wrinkled tournament bracket from a makeshift league you organized in your living room one rainy afternoon. 8 players, all imaginary. Each card in the bracket was represented by a different plushie you owned. Snorlax always lost because he kept falling asleep, and Gengar was disqualified once for cheating through walls. It was total chaos, with you as referee, coach, audience, and announcer. You narrated the entire tournament into a toy karaoke machine, complete with improvised sound effects and dramatic musical cues. The tape still exists somewhere in a drawer, probably next to a pack of dried-out markers and a handful of old Pokémon Pogs that somehow survived multiple spring cleanings. The point is, you made Pokémon your world, not just a hobby or a card game, but a stage for your creativity, a sandbox for your imagination, a comforting friend that always had room for another idea. Even now, as you thumb through these memories, there's a softness to it all, like a lullaby in cardboard form. Behind that old bracket sheet is something even more unexpected, a photograph, faded and slightly curled at the edges. But there it is, your first collection, proudly spread out across your bedroom floor. You, grinning wildly, holding up your prized holo, Hitmonchan, unaware that your socks don't match or that you're kneeling on a pile of opened wrappers. In the background, a pizza box, a Game Boy Color with a dead battery, and a single VHS copy of the Pokémon movie just barely in frame. That picture is a time machine. You remember every detail of that day. The excitement of finding a holographic, the thrill of showing it to your family, even though they didn't quite understand but clapped anyway. You remember feeling invincible, like no bad grade or awkward recess could touch you when you had your binder full of Pokémon by your side. You flipped the photo over, scribbled in pencil, best day ever. No punctuation, no second guessing. Just a declaration from your younger self that somehow still feels completely true. Somewhere in that last page flap is a single card that never quite fit anywhere else. A Japanese language Mew card you couldn't read but adored anyway. You remember how it shimmered differently, how the characters felt ancient and mysterious. You showed it, off like it was from another planet. This one's rare, you told everyone, even though you weren't sure. It felt like a secret message from another world, a window into a bigger universe of cards and trainers beyond your own neighborhood. You'd stare at it for minutes, inventing what its moves might do. Dream Beam, Mystic Hug, Memory Drift, names you made up without any proof, but all the conviction in the world. And now, in the quiet of this sleepy moment, that same imagination stirs again. What if that Mew wasn't just a card, but a key? What if the binder itself is a sort of portal, not just to the past, but to the heart of who you've always been? A dreamer, a collector, a believer in magic hiding inside small things. There's a pocket on the back of the binder that used to hold stickers. Now it holds, well, still some stickers, including one of Psyduck holding a calculator, and another of Jigglypuff with a microphone looking very serious about karaoke. But beneath those, there's something else. An envelope addressed in your own handwriting, labeled, "Do not open until I am a grown-up." With a laugh and a little curiosity, you slide it open. Inside, a letter from past you. It starts, "Dear Trainer Me," and goes on to list your current team at the time: Pikachu, Typhlosion, Umbreon, Butterfree, and Heracross. Strong choices, honestly, followed by a series of goals like catch 'em all, obviously. Own at least one real Charizard, and still like Pokemon when I'm old, like 20. You hit that last one out of the park. There's a sketch at the bottom, badly drawn but lovingly inked, of your imagined grown-up self sitting in a big chair, still holding a Pokemon card in one hand and a mug of hot cocoa in the other. Turns out you predicted your current vibe pretty accurately. And as the warmth of that letter settles in your chest, you realize something quietly powerful. This wasn't just a hobby. It was your first real story. Not one you read in a book or watched on TV, but one you lived. You created characters, designed teams, imagined cities, battles, friendships, rivalries. Your Pokemon cards were your first tools of world building, your earliest canvas for storytelling. And now, all these years later, flipping through these pages feels like reading the journal of your inner adventurer, the dreamer who never really stopped believing in the magic of it all. It's like every hollow, every scribbled note, every slightly warped water energy is whispering, "You've always known how to find joy in small things." The final surprise lies under the binder itself. A printed list, hole-punched and dog-eared, titled "The Ultimate Wish List." It features cards you never owned but hoped you might. Base set Charizard, of course, but also Espeon from Neo Discovery, Umbreon, from the e-reader set, and that glorious shining Gyarados. Some have checks next to them, acquired over years of trades and luck. Others remain uncrossed, still dreams, still sparkling just beyond reach. But instead of feeling incomplete, the list feels inspiring. Not everything has to be finished. Some cards are better left longed for. There's beauty in the chase, in the possibility, in the idea that your collection can always grow, always surprise you. Maybe you'll stumble on that last card at a garage sale someday, or maybe you'll just imagine pulling it one sleepy night like this, with your binder in your lap and your memories curling around you like a blanket. And that's the true secret of this sleepy journey. It never really ends. Not when the cards are tucked away. Not when the last holo has been admired. Not even when the binder is closed. Because the real collection, your true treasure, isn't cardboard or plastic. It's the stories you attach to them. The warmth of the past, gently glowing through the fog of forgetfulness. The Pokémon that cheered you up when nothing else did. The scribbled letters and bent corners and impossible custom cards. You didn't just collect Pokémon cards. You collected yourself. All the versions of you who sat on bedroom floors, traded on school steps, imagined leagues and legends and lava-resistant Jigglypuffs. They're still here, still shining, still waiting to turn the next page. And just as your fingers begin to close the binder, you notice, almost like it's appeared by magic, a single energy card stuck to the inside back cover hidden under the corner flap. It's a lightning energy, slightly bent, a little faded, but still humming with the same spark that once lit up your imagination like a thunderbolt. You chuckle, remembering how even energy cards felt like gold when your deck was low. There was a time you believed if you stared hard enough at a lightning energy, you could maybe summon Pikachu himself. And now, here it is, silent, small, and strangely powerful. You slip it into the empty slot on the last page, completing nothing in particular, but feeling entirely complete anyway. The hum of that small card is like a lullaby you haven't heard in years. A simple reminder that wonder never asks for permission. It just shows up when you're looking close enough. You settle deeper under the weight of memory and cardboard, letting the familiar rustle of plastic sleeves and the gentle shine of foil lull you further into this soft little universe of childhood dreams. Nothing needs to be finished tonight. Not the set, not the story, not even the nostalgia. There's time for one more card later, one more binder, one more quiet memory that floats in like a butterfree on a summer breeze. And somewhere in your drifting thoughts, maybe Pikachu gives you a tiny wink. Ancient Mew whispers another secret, and Charizard, eternally blazing, guards the gates of your dreams like the legend he is. And just like that, your inner collector rolls over, smiles in the dark, and turns the page once again. Because sleep comes easy when your deck is full of wonder, and your night is made of memories. And now, as we reach the end of tonight's nostalgic journey through classic Pokémon cards, take a deep breath with me. Inhale, gently, and exhale slowly. Let your eyes grow heavier, your thoughts softer, and your body more still. You spent the last 2 hours exploring memories, legends, and treasures, cards that once lived in binder sleeves, traded hands on schoolyards, and whispered tales of rarity and wonder. Tonight, we've wandered through history together, from the fiery shadow of base set Charizard to the ancient glow of the Mew card, steeped in mystery, from the rare, near-mythical Pikachu illustrator to the mischievous shimmer of dark Gyarados from Team Rocket's elusive archive. Each card brought its own kind of magic, its own kind of memory. Maybe you remember holding one of those cards in your own hands years ago. Or maybe this was your first time hearing about some of these legendary pieces. Either way, the stories these cards tell are universal, stories of imagination, play, collecting, trading, and dreaming. Always dreaming. Maybe you remember holding one of those cards in your own hands years ago. Or maybe this was your first time hearing about some of these legendary pieces. Either way, the stories these cards tell are universal. Stories of imagination, play, collecting, trading, and dreaming, always dreaming. And dreaming is where we gently drift to now, because the truth is, these cards weren't just cardboard and ink. They were the start of rituals, tiny sacred moments. Remember unwrapping a booster pack, the slow peel of the foil, the soft crackle as the wrapper gave way, the smell of new ink and fresh cardboard. You'd thumb through each card gently, heart racing, hoping for something rare, something special. And when it came, When you saw that flash of holographic light, it felt like winning the lottery, a childhood lottery of joy. Maybe you showed it off to friends the next day at recess. Or maybe you tucked it safely into a binder, carefully sliding it into a sleeve, afraid to even bend the corner. These cards mattered. They felt alive. They held stories. Some of us played the game. Others just admired the art. Some made decks. Some never learned the rules. It didn't matter. The magic worked either way. And as we drift deeper into this gentle night, maybe you can imagine that binder again, lying on your bed, feet in the air, flipping through pages. Charizard glinting in the light, Blastoise looking stoic and proud, Mewtwo mysterious and powerful, Misty's tears quiet, emotional, ancient Mew with its unreadable glyphs, glowing like a secret. Maybe you didn't have all of them. Maybe you only saw them once in a magazine or a friend's collection. But the memory stuck. It lodged in your heart like a lullaby you couldn't forget. And now it's back, softly, kindly, ready to help you sleep. Let's remember the card trades, the playground negotiations, the kid who always had duplicates, the one who kept their best cards in a plastic case they never opened, the kid who fibbed and said they had Pikachu Illustrator at home, the pride, the laughter, the friendships. It wasn't about value back then. It was about connection, who you traded with, what you gave up to get that one card you wanted, how you showed it off, how it made you feel like you were part of something bigger, this glowing, colorful world of creatures and trainers, battles and bonds. And now, years later, that world still exists. It's changed, evolved, become more complex. But the heart of it, still the same. Sometimes when you can't sleep, it's not because your body is restless. It's because your mind is too loud, full of lists, worries, tasks left undone. But these stories, these soft, quiet memories, they don't demand anything from you. They don't need solving. They just want to be remembered. So, let's remember. Let's remember how the ancient Mew card was given away at movie theaters, how it shimmered with mystery, wrapped in its own little envelope. Let's remember how you held it up to the light and tried to decode the runes. You couldn't. No one could. But it didn't matter. It felt sacred. Or think about the Team Rocket set, that glorious wave of darker, edgier cards. Dark Arbok, Dark Dragonite, and Dark Gyarados. The backgrounds were black, the Pokémon twisted, tough, mischievous. They made us feel like rebels. Just a little. Just enough. Even Shining Charizard. Do you remember how that card flipped expectations? A Charizard, but light, gleaming, almost ghostly, like a star burning quietly in the night. It was the first time many of us saw a card that reimagined a Pokémon so boldly. It wasn't just cool. It was art. There's so much richness in these pieces of cardboard, so much warmth. You may have forgotten the exact HP totals, the attacks, the energy costs, but what lingers is the feeling, the moment, the glow. So now, as the night deepens, let your thoughts settle into that glow. Let your body sink into your bed like a Snorlax, finding its perfect patch of mossy ground. Let your fingers relax like you're no longer holding a stack of cards. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop. Let everything you're carrying slip away. Because here, in this quiet space, the only thing you need to carry is memory, and not even heavily. Let them drift like leaves in a river. Let them float across your thoughts like Pokémon in a dream. Soft, weightless, familiar. Maybe you'll dream of opening one last booster pack. Maybe you'll dream of finding a hidden box in your childhood closet, full of old cards you forgot you owned. Maybe you'll dream of a glowing pokeball, slowly turning in the air, revealing treasures not yet seen. Whatever it is, trust that it will be gentle. Trust that it will guide you, not challenge you. Tonight isn't for effort. It's for rest. So close your eyes. You've done enough today, and there's more waiting. And dreaming is where we gently drift to now,
Because the truth is, these cards weren't just cardboard and ink. They were passports to another world, a world where electric, mice and sea dragons danced across our imaginations, where battles weren't violent, but strategic and playful, where every pull of a booster pack felt like opening a door to a hidden treasure chest. Even now, years later, the artwork still holds that gentle spark. The colors, the holographic shine, the feel of the card in your fingers. It all stays with you. And in moments like this, when the night is quiet and the world softens, we remember it even more clearly. You've traveled far tonight, not in miles, but in memory. And the journey doesn't end here. There are still more stories to tell, more cards to discover, more cozy nights like this one waiting ahead. Maybe next time we'll revisit the Gym Heroes sets, with Misty, Brock, Sabrina, and Erica gracing cards full of subtle emotion and elegant design. Or we'll explore the legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, Suicune, in their Neo Revelation debut. We might even take a quiet stroll through the world of Japanese exclusive promos, secret cards that never made it to Western shelves but whispered their way through collector circles like lullabies passed between dreamers. Because this world, this gentle, glowing world of Pokémon nostalgia, is endless, and each night I'll be here to guide you through it, one card at a time, one soft memory at a time. You don't have to do anything. You don't need to remember every fact or every name. Just let the images linger in your mind, like a flicker of holographic foil in soft candlelight. Let the names, Lugia, Mewtwo, Typhlosion, settle in your thoughts like the echo of an old tune. You don't even need to be fully awake. In fact, it's okay if you're already floating somewhere between waking and dreaming. That's the point. That's where the magic is. Because long after the trading ended and the booster packs stopped printing, these cards never really left. They stayed with us quietly, patiently, waiting to be remembered. And now, with every soft word and gentle scene, we remember them together, in this calm space where nostalgia and rest intertwine. They shine again. Tonight was only the beginning. There are hundreds, no, thousands of cards left to explore, each with its own story, some with powerful moves and towering stats, others with delicate illustrations and soft watercolor tones. Some cards will make us laugh, remembering silly trades we once made. Others might stir emotion, gentle, unexpected waves, because they remind us of someone or somewhere or some simpler time. And that's the magic of sleep stories like this. They're not just about facts. They're not just about collecting or gameplay. They're about emotion, memory, comfort, rest. So as your breath slows and your body feels heavy, let the glow of those classic cards lull you deeper. Let their stories wrap around you like a warm blanket on a cold night. Let their legends hum quietly in the background, like a lullaby you don't need to fully hear to feel comforted by. Imagine a soft wooden desk, a beam of golden light, a binder slowly flipping open. Inside, Charizard, Mew, Pikachu, Blastoise, Misty's tears, each card gleaming faintly like memories shining through fog. You run your fingers along the plastic sleeves, smile faintly, then gently close the binder. You're done for tonight. But there's more, waiting, always more waiting. And I'll be here to guide you through it. In the next video, we'll look at promo cards from the Pokémon movies, the Gold Star series, maybe even the beautiful, dreamy e-reader sets, the ones with artwork that feels like storybooks, the ones that carry emotion you can't explain, only feel. You're safe here. There's no pressure, no battles to win, no decks to build, just stories, memories, and sleep. Let your mind wander wherever it needs to go. Let it drift to a time when life was simpler. Maybe you're in your childhood bedroom. Maybe you're back in a toy store, booster pack in hand. Or maybe you're just floating in a warm, golden space, surrounded by all the cards you ever loved. No need to hold on tightly. Let go. Float. Rest. You've spent enough time searching, collecting, remembering. Now it's time to rest in the joy of it. Let the warmth of nostalgia settle into your heart. Let the softness of your pillow cradle you like a Snorlax tucked in for the night. Let the sound of your own breathing be your lullaby. Because while this video ends, the dream doesn't. More is coming. More relaxing stories of Pokemon cards, games, shows, and memories. All told in this cozy, quiet way. All made just for you, to help you fall asleep, to help you remember, and to help you feel safe. I'm so glad you were here tonight. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting yourself rest. I hope you'll be back next time for another sleepy, nostalgic trip into the world of Pokemon. Until then, may your dreams be filled with shinies, with stars, with perfect pulls and gentle glows. Good night, trainer. You've earned your rest.